Okay, so we've already done our introductions here, so I'll jump straight into why United Way Winnipeg. You might get this question a number of times from people in your department, wondering why they should invest in or support the United Way. So one really wonderful thing about the United Way is that it forms a community fund that we can access for our city. And so what this is we all pool our gifts within the United Way, and that provides stability for community organizations in Winnipeg. So it creates a buffer for those agencies and programs working in the community from the ups and downs of individual giving throughout the year. So the stability allows organizations to be able to do their work and plan, and so they don't have to be worried about funding. So with the stable funding, agencies can deliver their frontline support for thousands of Winnipeggers every day. And they have the ability to just focus on hiring their staff and planning for the year, ensuring that their programs are running, instead of worrying about where their next funding is going to be coming from. And so that's really, really important for an organization to be able to function. It's we often say that that's like gold, that stability that we provide to our community agencies. So the United Way funds a network of more than 100 agencies within Winnipeg. And this network is so important because it means that families and individuals have access to supports that they might need for different areas of their life, because each person will need different supports at different times in order to remain strong and in order to face different challenges that they might have within their lives. So that's really beneficial, having that fund available. And we call this the power and value of collective giving. That's what the United Way Fund provides to us. Another important reason why the United Way is so important for us to support is the way that it operates. It provides accountability. And we use these 4 measures. The United Way uses these 4 measures to ensure that accountability when they receive funding from people within the city. They build capacity by bringing community organizations together and sharing best practices. So this helps them to standardize evaluation and ensure an integrated approach that better serves our city. And this helps to strengthen the nonprofit sector and the work that they do within the community. United Way has volunteer-led panels that evaluate and make recommendations on investing the donor dollars that they receive into programs that make a real difference in people's lives. So the United Way volunteers also work with agency partners to evaluate the impact of those agencies and help improve their ability to deliver effective programming. The United Way connects people around a common goal. So through the United Way Winnipeg, people and partners from all sectors work together to create integrated responses to complex community issues, issues such as poverty and homelessness and unemployment. And they draw on one another's experience and expertise and influence to address these issues. And finally, the United Way relies heavily on research. With the help of their partners, the United Way understands the needs of the community that it's serving, both longstanding and emerging issues that it looks at. So the research that United Way does allows them to have an effective and innovative way to make the biggest difference possible within the community. So that's very important, the accountability that the United Way has when using donor funds. Another important thing is that through the United Way, all donated funds go directly to the community organizations that work with people. Thanks to a grant that the province of Manitoba has been providing since 1978, all operating and grant and fundraising expenses are covered by the province. So any money that people donate goes directly to the organizations and to the people that they are intended for. One important thing that I think has really demonstrated the value of the United Way in Winnipeg this year has been their response to the pandemic. From day one, the United Way stepped up to provide support to organizations and people in the city who are facing the impact of the pandemic. So the United Way assured agencies that they would not lose their funding. And on top of that, it also provided additional funding to agencies, emergency funding that they could use to support the people who have been affected by the pandemic directly. They matched volunteers to agencies looking for help, and also have been working with the Government of Canada to steward crisis relief funding. So that's been very important in the past 6 months, working within the community. The United Way knows that after a disaster like the pandemic that we're facing, there's going to be long-standing issues that we have to face. And so it is already looking at ways to address these issues now and also during the recovery phase from the pandemic. In that vein, it has identified 3 areas that it would like to focus on in order to support the people of Winnipeg. One of these areas is in mental health and addiction support. So we know that during the pandemic, we're all under a lot of stress. People are facing a lot of strain because of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, 1 in 3 Manitobans over the age of 15 had a significant mental health or substance use challenges. And now, because of the pandemic, half of Canadians say that their mental health has deteriorated. Now, the United Way has already been funding agencies that provide mental health supports and counseling services, and will continue to do so. And they have been reaching more than 45,000 people already. The United Way has also been providing support for families during the pandemic. There has been, we all know there has been a lot of strain on families, families unable to provide, to purchase essentials and supplies, and sometimes not able to pay their bills. So the United Way works with many family support and family resource organizations that have been working hard during the past 6 months to provide support. And finally, the third major issue that the United Way has identified is job readiness and training. So nearly 85,000 Manitobans lost their jobs between February and April. A large number of people have lost their jobs. So it's really important to focus on job readiness and retraining programming. And that is something that the United Way already does. So it'll be really essential for the United Way to be able to continue their funding to organizations and agencies in the city that provide those supports to people. So keeping that in mind, we would like to, we're aiming to raise $105,000 this year during our University of Winnipeg campaign. So last year, you can see the stats here from last year, we raised $105,650. So we'd like to come close to that again this year. And I think definitely with your help and all of us working together, we will be able to reach our goal this year. So that is just a little bit about why supporting the United Way is so important for us. And I'm just going to hand it over to Danny now, who'll talk a little bit more about the role of ambassadors in our campaign this year, and also look a little bit more into frequently asked questions that you might receive from people within your departments. Danny?
Thank you, Tari. I don't have control.
Okay, let me just try that.
I'm just going to ask you to flip the slide.
Sure.
Okay, so let me just pause. So last year we raised $105,000. We were ecstatic about that. Our goal was $100,000. The year before it was $110,000. So we were very disappointed the year before. We didn't make that $110,000. And we were delighted last year that we made the 105. We were especially delighted at the 15.3% participation rate. So of the about 1,000 people who I think get canvassed through our campaign on campus, 15% donated something. Undoubtedly, some gave outside of our campaign through a spouse or a partner's work situation or whatever. But 15.3% is a big jump from the year before. It's much higher than at the University of Manitoba. My University of Manitoba colleague is very jealous of us. He's very jealous about how organized we are this year. And I'm very proud of how organized we are this year. There is some uncertainty, of course. We're not sure how a virtual campaign is going to work. The whole campaign, all the campaigns across the city are virtual. And so there's this unease, but this optimism as well. I have frequent cabinet meetings, and we are, as of last week, we were just a little bit below last year's trend. We were a little bit below last year's funds raised to this date, but it's looking really good. There was one day last week where $1 million came into the city's campaign on one particular day. The goal, there is no official goal for the city this year because of that uneasiness about where we're going to go. But there's this growing optimism that we're going to reach 20, 21 million again, as we did last year. And we, $100,000, $105,000 is no small amount of money to add to the city's campaign. So it's really important that we work hard to stay at 105 and to exceed 105 and to keep donors donating, to keep donors donating, and to find new donors. One of the messages, as is always the case in these ambassador trainings, is you don't have to give big. You don't have to give it all. It's your choice. Everybody has their choice. But even small donations are valued. There is no donation that's too small. And so if you could remind your colleagues of that, we would appreciate that. So next slide, please. So our launch, just as you might know, or maybe not, our official launch date is November 4th, a little bit later than last year. All the campaigns in the city are a little bit later. November 4th, we're going to have a virtual launch at 12:30 to 1:20 on that day, hopefully a nice tight program. There's a $5 ticket to join that launch. You might remember at launches, we had $5 tickets to get poutine in recent years. We can't do that this year. But
the launch is sounding like lunch.
What was that?
I said launch is sounding like lunch. I keep thinking you're saying lunch.
Lunch, a virtual lunch. There is no lunch. You have your own lunch. But the $5 does get you your name in the hat, so to speak, for prizes. So we have $100 skip the dishes gift certificate and a whole bunch of $50 gift cards and a Jets golf bag that my colleague Bill Buhay in Department of Geography won at the golf tournament this year. But he's a Leafs fan, so he wants this Jets golf bag out of his house. I asked him for it, and he kindly donated it to us. So thank you, Bill. A really nice golf bag. So hopefully you and your colleagues will join us for that. There'll be messages coming out about that, about how to join with $5. There'll be some speakers, of course, Tracy, James Curry, a few videos, recorded videos, a trivia game that is being organized. So a tight but fun but important launch event on November 4th. We sure hope you can join us. And then on that date, everybody will get their pledge cards, their pledge emails emailed to them, where you can make your pledge online. Of course, all the pledges will be online this year. I suppose it is possible to do a paper one and mail it in or something like that. But of course, the easiest thing to do is by payroll deduction or a credit card. Next slide, please, Tari. So what's your role as an ambassador? Your role is to inspire people to give, and especially maybe people who haven't given in the past, to inspire them to do that. And this year, more than ever, we need the we need help. As Tari said, agencies have the community fund concept is so important. An agency knows what it's going to get this year and it knows what it's going to get next year. As an aside, Winnipeg is in a pretty good position. For example, recently, agencies in Edmonton were told that they were going to get their funding reduced by 10%. That's not happening in Winnipeg. And the agencies are overjoyed with that. In fact, they need more money, of course. So your job is to remind people. And right from the beginning, we're always talking about respectfully asking, respectfully reminding. If people feel bothered, you leave them alone. If you know somebody is not a donor for some philosophical reason or whatever, you don't want to bother them. You want to politely, respectfully, virtually remind people through email or Zooms or whatever it's your choice. If you have a department meeting, if you could ask permission to bring it up at a department meeting on a Zoom call, it's up to you how you engage and how often you engage, but it needs to be done respectfully but it needs to be done. That is, as you'll see in an upcoming slide, if you don't ask people, then they're not likely to give. So it's important that we remind people. Everybody's going to get that email on November 4th, but as an ambassador, it's your responsibility to remind people. And we'll talk about how you know who's given or who hasn't responded. I've provided on this PowerPoint, we're going to send that to you, a link to the city's campaign website, which has lots of information, and our own United Way website at the university. Our communications office has been wonderful this year. They provided us with lots of help to run our campaign, including creation of this website. So there'll be all kinds of resources. And importantly, on that site will be a place where you can yourself go, or your colleagues can go if they don't have or have lost their email that has the link in it. Next slide, please, Tari. So however you choose, we would like you to inspire people. And we're trying to give you the resources to do that. And as I said, to connect with people in the way that you feel most comfortable. This year it's by email. This year it's by Zoom, whatever it might be. So please work at that. The campaign will wrap up in mid-December. So it's a fairly tight window. Donations can come in at any time. They can come in late, but our campaign will wrap up in mid-December. Next slide, please, Tari. And as I said, it's really important to ask people to donate, to remind people that there's this need. People don't give if they don't know. People don't give if you don't ask. And so that's an important responsibility that you have here. Next slide, please. So for those of you who have done this before, you'll recognize some of this. We used to do paper pledge cards, and even in the age of email or online electronic pledge cards, it's still possible to get a paper pledge card and fill it out and mail it in with a check or something like that. It's very unlikely that people will want to do that. The typical way is by payroll deduction. Payroll deduction starts in January. So any pledges made during this campaign will be taken, if it's a payroll deduction, will be taken from payroll for the calendar year 2021. So it's important to remind people about that. It, of course, can be applied to a tax reduction on income tax. And you can do it through credit card and so forth. Next slide, please. We don't have the pledge site live yet. It will come live on November 4th, but this is what it looks like. And as an ambassador, you have one extra aspect to your pledge site. And that is at the bottom of the page, it will say e-pledge ambassador. And when you click on that, it'll take you to a page such as the one on the left and on the right, where you can look at who in your unit that you've been assigned to or has been assigned to you. Let's say it's Tabitha in chemistry. on that list, in a spreadsheet will pop up all the people in chemistry, and it'll list who has responded to the email. You never know who's given. You never know how much people give. You never know if people haven't given. You only know if people have responded, clicked on that email and said, I'm giving or I'm not giving. And if people choose not to give, it's important for them to tell us that I choose not to give. And it doesn't matter what reason they have. It's important from a management point of view, if possible, for people to say, I'm not giving. And in any case, once they've done that, and especially once they've donated, they'll be ticked off your list. And so remaining will be a list of people that we respectfully ask you to respectfully ask, you still have time to give, and do you need any information? So again, you never know what people give, you never know whether people give, but you are able to track who in your unit has clicked yes or no on that email, and that's all you'll know.
Okay.
Next slide. And unfortunately, we don't have that live today. And if you have any trouble with that, Tari or myself or anybody on the committee will be happy to walk you through it through an email or a phone call or a Zoom. An important thing is, and I'm wary of time here, the important thing is that if somebody is donating for the first time, if they give $150 or more, the Johnston group will give $150, matched up to $150. The Johnson Group is a very large company in Winnipeg. The president, I guess he is, or the CEO is Dave Angus, very well-known man, just a fantastic guy. He's the chair of the city's campaign. He used to be chair of the Chamber of Commerce, just dynamo guy. Last year, the chair of the campaign was Barb Gammy, who is now our chancellor at the University of Winnipeg. Both wonderful, wonderful people. In any case, if somebody gives $150 this year and they haven't given before, the Johnson Group will match that $150. If they give more than that, they'll match up to $150. If you've already been a donor, if somebody's already been a donor and they raise their donation by $150 or by any amount, it'll be matched up to $150.
Oh.
So there's a really good pot of money sitting there in the Johnson Group's bank waiting to be plumped into the United Way campaign's bank. That matching money doesn't go to the university's total amount. The matching money doesn't count as our $105,000, but it counts in many other ways, of course. So if you could politely remind people to donate more, and in fact, on your pledge card, on the email pledge card or the electronic pledge card, it'll remind you, if you donated last year, it'll remind you what you gave last year, and it'll politely ask you to donate more. And if you do, it'll get matched up to $150. So please consider giving a little bit more than last year to cover inflation costs and crisis costs, the COVID costs. Next slide, Tari, please. Atari is going to send you out a whole bunch of information, including the privacy confidentiality agreement that is important. You don't really see any numbers, of course, but you do need to be respectful and confidential and so forth. So we're going to provide you with those links and those things to read up on. And if there's anything missing, you can ask myself or Tari, and we'll get them to you electronically. Tari, next slide, please. So some frequently asked questions. So we'll run through this very quickly here. There are so many organizations. Why ask me for money? What makes United Way Winnipeg special? Well, Tari spoke on that earlier. It's this community fund, United Fund, that provides stability for funding. If somebody knows what they're going to get next year and the year after that, they can make planning, and people's jobs are secure and the work that they do is secure. Next slide. I heard that most of the donation goes to administration. Wrong. As Tari said, the government pays for the running of the United Way offices. None of this money goes to staff. None of this money goes to rent. None of this money goes to heat or paper. It's an amazing thing, and it's not a common thing across Canada. Next slide. Why does United Way Winnipeg need my personal information? Well, in order for the donation process to happen properly, it needs that. I'm not really sure what they're asking there, but it's where you work and so forth. Next slide. Why should United Way Winnipeg decide where my money goes? Because, to be frank, they know best how to implement it, how most efficiently to implement it. So there's this committee that produces the community fund, and they decide where it goes. And they do a lot of research on that, as Tari pointed out. Next. Why should I give? I never use these services. You never know when you and your family, your loved ones are going to need the United Way. If you have a heart attack or some serious medical issue, there's a very good chance that you will at some point have the opportunity to engage with the United Way. Mental illness strikes in all communities across the city. And let's say that this is not just about supporting people in the inner city of Winnipeg who have desperate needs. Many of our neighbors in downtown Winnipeg are poor and are under enormous stress right now, as always. But look at any neighborhood across the city, and there are people that are using United Way services across the 100 agencies. There are drop-in centers all across the city. There are mental health services being offered all across the city, and so forth. It's not just the cliche, stereotypical kind of downtown, down and out person who needs an United Way. We all do at some point, unfortunately, or a very good chance of that. Next slide, please. Sorry. And how do we know if we're making a difference? Well, the United Way does just a remarkable job. We can trust the United Way. They have so much experience. They're one of the best United Ways across Canada. They're very well respected for what they do. And I'm proud to, as I said, proud to be affiliated with them for so many reasons, including that one. And Tari, next slide. And as Tracy said, and I've said, and Tari has said, and everybody will say, thank you, thank you, thank you. What you do makes a difference. It truly does. United Way is run by volunteers. And so we are so grateful for the time that you've spent with us today and the time that you're going to spend on this over the next few months. Be proud of what you do because it makes a difference. It helps people's lives. There are people all across the city who need our help. If not today, then tomorrow. But especially in this time of COVID, as the United Way says in its campaign right now, it's time to rally. And we do really need to rally for this. It's so important. So with that, I'm looking at the clock. It's 1:26, and if you have to bow out to go to another meeting or whatever, I appreciate that. But I will open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions for Tari or myself?
I just need some clarification. So
Sure.
if someone has donated before, then the Johnson Group will match it if it's 150 or more above that, right? They'll.
If you gave 160 last year and you give 170 this year, they're going to match that $10 extra.
Oh, okay. You don't have to.
If you increase it up to 150, they'll match up to 150. If you give 200, they're only going to match 150 of that. There's a limit on that.
Okay. It's not like the first timers where it has to be 150 before it kicks in. Okay, good. Thanks.
Right. And I was going to say something about that, but I've forgotten now.
And I just had a question, Danny. So for the $150 challenge, does that include, say, a payroll deduction as if it adds up to 150 and over, or is it only for a one-time annual $150 donation?
If you give on payroll, maybe I don't understand this. If you give on payroll and you're going to give $400 on payroll, and last year you gave 300, Johnson will add $100 to the city's campaign.
Okay, yeah, no, I just meant for just, I just didn't know if it meant like an accumulation of, say, $150 over the year, or if it had to be $150 one-shot donation, like here's United Way, here's $150 at a time in order for them to match it, or if they match it, if it's like, say, $10 a paycheck over the year.
It doesn't matter. You're going to pledge a certain amount for the year. It doesn't have to be payroll. It could be a credit card. It could be a check that you send them. It doesn't matter the means by which the money is donated. But they'll match up to $150 if you increase by that amount or more.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else?
Sorry, this is Mary speaking. Sorry, I just joined because I was I'm going to put my video on so you can actually see who's talking. I just joined because I was in a class earlier. I was just going to ask, is there a recording of this that I can watch, and probably the slides as well?
Tari's been recording the slide session. So yes, you're right. We'll be sending that out to everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mary, what department are you in?
Computer science.
Oh,
applied computer science.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your volunteering.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
I have another question. It's from the beginning of the slide. You said that there were 32 leadership gifts. This is when you were saying, what is a leadership gift?
I'm so glad you reminded me of that. So a leader is somebody who gives $1,200 or more.
Oh.
And last year, 32 people on campus gave $1,200 or more. Obviously, that is an enormous amount of money for our campaign. That's if everybody just gave $1,200, 12 times 32 is, over $30,000. Where's our math person? That's a third of our campaign right there. So if you could remind people that if they were a leader, please, it's really important that you stay a leader and increase. It's so important. Leaders across the city comprise an enormous percentage of the city's campaign and in our campaign. And while I have that in mind, a big shout out to our retirees. A remarkable thing is that about a third of our campaign comes from retirees. People who no longer are employed by the university give an enormous amount of money. So we work closely with the retirees, the University of Winnipeg, the Faculty Association retirees in particular, but not just the faculty, the staff as well. They continue to give, and that is a remarkable thing. Same thing at the University of Manitoba. About a third of the campaign comes from retirees. So that's a testament to the value that people see in the United Way, even when they're not fully employed. So it's something that just astounds me, and it's so important for our campaign. So you don't contact retirees. That's done separately through the Retirees Association. But leaders, if you want to remind people that if they give $1,200 or more, they get classified as a leader and acknowledged as such. And I think they get a pin in the mail or something like that, their name in the newspaper if they choose to do so, and so forth.